Hello, hello. It's so tragic what happened to a parktown boy, a grade 8 learner who drowned in the river. Watch this full video where an interview was conducted from an eyewitness. Watch this full video. Thank you.
Um, More than that, making sure that there is a thorough gathering of what the probable facts are surrounding the death of this youngster. But there were a couple of things that she said to me, the spokesperson, that I think stood out for me and was quite telling about how, on the face of it, there appeared to have been absolute negligence on the part of the camp facilitators in terms of what needed to be in place when the boys got to the riverside where this activity happened, and beyond that, what should have happened immediately after the makeshift structure had capsized and the boy was swept down the river, and later, of course, his body was then recovered. And the next piece of the puzzle is to then understand what eyewitnesses might in fact have observed. And so far, we have not had an eyewitness account from any of the learners that would have been one of the last people to see Enoch alive and who might have been with Enoch in the same group that was assigned this particular activity. Now, I said to you earlier in the week that I have had access to material that really left me completely gobsmacked, both in terms of the camp facilitators' actions or inaction, as well as those of the school institutionally and school staff members. But I wasn't going to play you any of that or broadcast any of that just because I want to be the first to do so. There are incredible ethical considerations here. One of them is that the trauma for the children continue, and you do not want to re-traumatize children. Secondly, when it comes to how one handles the testimony of children in the media, as journalists, we've got to be very sensitive in terms of identities, making sure that we do not expose children. They could be bullied. And the last thing you want is for a child to suddenly find themselves isolated, targeted, either by the school or even by their peers. And so what I did was, for you to understand the production process and how I think about the balance of public interest and the need for truth on the one hand, with competing ethical interests on the other hand, like centering the interests of the child, is that I worked with the parents. And the parents, every step of the way, as well as a psychologist that is now working with the parents, have made sure that the best interest of their son are at the heart of how the testimony of the son gets into the public space. And that is why I've taken my time, instead of in the first instance telling you what the boy, who was possibly the last person to see Enoch alive, had in fact experienced with Enoch in the same group as Enoch and in the river itself. And only now am I in a position to do exactly that. And in his own words, I'm going to play you in a second what it sounds like. It is not his voice, because part of getting that balance right between truth and public interest on the one hand and journalistic ethics on the other is that we need to minimize any recrimination, both for the family and specifically for this youngster that was in the group of Enoch Mpianzi. So one of my colleagues had voiced the testimony, but the testimony is the honest eyewitness account of the youngster that was with Enoch Mpianzi in a group on this camp, with him in this exercise at the river, in the river, and it is a devastating account. The family is aware of this account because they've now been shared the details. So I've also made sure, which was also the youngster, the eyewitness, his wish for the mom and dad of Enoch to get this information before it comes out in the media, including on my show. So this will not be new to Enoch's family. And that was also important to the youngster whose eyewitness account we're about to broadcast. And I'm very pleased about that because, again, it's easy to say truth trumps everything, but the reality is there's a grieving family. The grieving family is aware of the details that you're about to hear for the first time. And so you won't hear the voice of the 13-year-old that was with Enoch because I'm protecting his identity. But the eyewitness account that is about to be voiced for you is an honest account of what the 13-year-old that was with Enoch had experienced and observed on that fateful day.
My name is Lizo. I'm a grade 8 learner at Parktown Boys High School. On Wednesday morning, the 15th of January, at Parktown Boys, I saw a boy standing alone, looking lonely. My friend Solly and I went to him to introduce ourselves to him. His name was Enoch Mpianzi. We instantly formed a bond. On the way to the bus, we greeted an older man who seemed to be Enoch's father, and we introduced ourselves. There was no roll call done before we had stepped on the bus, and none was done before the first activity at Nyate River and Bush Lodge. We next had lunch. We were split into groups for the first activity, building a stretcher. I was in the same group as Enoch. We were taken to a rugby field where we were given about 4 thick wooden poles and a few thinner poles and instructed to build a stretcher. We struggled tying the material together. Some poles kept on breaking. One of the activity facilitators told us to be more innovative and so to even use our shoelaces to tie the poles together. When the stretcher was complete, our next instruction was to race, carrying the stretcher, imagining an emergency. It had to be carried to the finish line. We were then told to take the stretcher to the river. There were no Parktown Boys High School teachers at the river, only us grade 8 boys, the school prefects, and the camp facilitators. The facilitators and prefects asked who could and could not swim, and those of us who said we were able to swim were instructed to handle the river task. Enoch identified himself as able to swim. No life vests were issued to any of us. None of us wore life vests. The school also had not asked us to bring any life vests to the camp. When we got to Crocodile River, we were told to get into the water and get ready to sail. Someone in the group was identified as the injured person for the purpose of the exercise and had to be sailed down the river through the water on the stretcher we had made to a point along the river that was identified as Point B. We fitted a black rubber donut-like swimming tube under the stretcher. Again, no safety vests were provided to us. The river tides were strong. In less than 2 minutes in the water, the stretcher capsized. It came loose and we all scrabbed for things to hang on to. Some of us held onto the rubber tube as it had become loose. Some of us used one arm to hang onto the rubber tube and the other to paddle. At that moment, I felt like I was going to die. Enoch did not manage to get onto the rubber tube. I saw him struggling. He seemed stuck in one place, trying to keep his head above water. I grabbed a pole and tried to pass it to Enoch, but I couldn't reach him. The river swept him away. Some boys started screaming for help as they saw, like me, Enoch struggle, but there was no adult in sight. We were swept around the river bend, and then I lost sight of Enoch. At this point, by now a little further down the river from where he had started, we were grabbed by camp facilitators who had been waiting for us down the stream. The current was so strong that it was impossible to swim. We could all have been swept away. Some of us were likely to have been grabbed by the facilitators. While trying to catch our breaths, we were instructed to immediately walk to the hole using a thorny trail. Some of us pulled our tracksuit pants under our feet while walking on top of the thorns. There were no teachers at the river. I had last seen the teachers when we had arrived at the lodge. Roll call was done at the hall. Solly, my friend, raised his hand when Enoch's name was called. He was asked by the roll caller if he was Enoch. When his response was no, the roll caller moved on to the next name. The person doing the roll call said he thinks Enoch did not come to the camp. But I told him Enoch was at the camp, and the last time I saw him, he was struggling in the river. The person then said there were groups with more head count and Enoch might have left my group for another. My story about the river and Enoch struggling was not listened to further. This was the very first roll call of the trip. For the next activity, we were meant to cook chicken for our supper. Our cooking was so bad that the camp provided full meals to us. I told my friend Solly how worried I was about not having seen Enoch since the river. We then approached the camp facilitator to tell him that Enoch was missing. The facilitator was rude and dismissed us. The second roll call was done in the evening around dinner time. Enoch was still not there. When I asked the facilitator about Enoch, again I was told that Enoch was in another cabin and had left our group. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept hearing wild sounds and worried if Enoch was alright. More activities happened following Thursday morning. One was an obstacle course and the other was swimming at the pool. In the morning on Thursday the 16th, a roll call was done, and Enoch was still not there. The teacher said he thinks Enoch did not come to the camp. Sule and I went to the teacher and told him that Enoch had definitely come to the camp and that the last time we saw him was at the river. It was after this that a search for Enoch started. I then saw one facilitator go to the river with a life jacket to look for Enoch. The camp activities continued, even though Enoch was missing. After lunch, there was another roll call at the hall. Activities continued, including a trust fall, a plate activity, and a talk by Coach Luke. We then went to the pool. I came back, took a shower, and went to dinner.